Tonight's guest might be the smartest person we've ever had on our show. His content and his YouTube channel called HVAC TV shows another side of the HVAC industry with videos that are educational content on many different commercial HVAC topics. He's a highly experienced engineer with over 25 years of mechanical and sales experience and is currently the technical sales and marketing director at Insight Partners, a company known for their commercial HVAC network. In addition to his YouTube channel, he's also host of the Engineering HVAC podcast. Everyone, please welcome Tony Mormino. Let's go.
Oh, man, I am not worthy of that introduction. Thank you so much. I'm doing well this evening, and thank you for having me.
I appreciate you taking time out. I'm a big fan. I think I told you that earlier. I sometimes watch your content. I'm actually teaching an A2L class, and I remember watching one or two of your videos because you've had some pretty smart folks on your channel trying to learn the ins and outs of this stuff, all these changes we've got coming down the pike. I don't know. Let's start with that. What's the deal, man? We're phasing out all these horrible global warming refrigerants, and what's the future hold as far as that goes? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so this is I think the third transition I've been through since I started. So in the beginning, when I first started, our industry reacts to the environmental pressures of the world, right? Like, so we don't get to make the decisions, but we get to live with the decisions. So in the beginning, it was all about the ozone layer, chlorine, right? CFCs, got to get rid of the chlorine because the chlorine molecules attacks the ozone layer. The ozone is 3 oxygen molecules. Anyway, so we got rid of all that. Now the whole thing is about global warming potential. And global warming is, there's an atmosphere we have, which is good because some of this heat from the sun comes here, it radiates off the earth, it keeps us warm. If you get too much of that, the theory is we get too warm and the temperatures rise, et cetera. So that's the theory behind the global warming. Some of the refrigerants have more of a global warming potential than others. And what that means is they hang out in the atmosphere longer. 410A has a global warming potential of 2022, I think, and the new ones coming in have to be under 700 GWP. So that's kind of what's running that whole deal there. So, and we get to respond to it, whether we like it or not. It's not like, we get a lot of comments. I'm sure you do too. This is, whatever. And the EPA this and this is that. And I'm not going to about it. But, we're kind of like, as industry experts, we're required to educate people. We just actually had 4 techs get certified through ESCO for A2L certification. So that's kind of what's going on. It happens all the time. It's going to happen another 10 years if we're still around, and it'll just keep on happening. That's the deal.
Yeah, I've got a friend that I've done some YouTube content with. He lives in the UK. And they're already phasing down or phasing out some of the refrigerants that the US is looking at introducing. We're always late to the party. We're always last in line with some of these things, which, full transparency, I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I think it's nice to see other folks be guinea pigs before we try things, especially when some refrigerants are mildly flammable. But it's still interesting to see how they're already on the next step. We'll see where that goes.
Yeah, we tend to lag behind. So there's something else coming, that's for sure. And I wish that the HVAC professionals, the people who live with this stuff, were more involved in the decisions that are made around this. And we're just not. My friend works for one of the large manufacturers, and he is in charge of governmental affairs. So all the big companies have a person who's responsible to go to Washington. They talk to the attorneys, they talk to the EPA. He says, when I go to a meeting in Washington to talk about this stuff, there's 12 lawyers and 1 engineer. Like, that's how these decisions are made. There's not a lot of engineering behind them. There's not a lot of practicality behind them in terms of pure engineering. I'm not talking about the environmental aspects of it, but yeah.
Yeah, it's just crazy. I mean, I think we could probably spend the entire show on things to come. And I will say, so I've gotten fairly familiar with our side of when I say our side, I'm drawing a line tonight, Tony. I'm on the residential side and you're on the commercial side. So our side here, the good side,
Right.
The good side, I've gotten fairly familiar with where we're going with things, with the left-handed threads on the refrigerant tanks, right? And a lot of the other changes that we see coming. What's it like on your side? Are y'all seeing the same sort of things, or is there a difference there?
No, I think it's all the same. I'm more on the engineering and sales side, so I'm not involved in the technician aspect of it, but I do know about the left-handed threads. I do know a lot of the equipment has to be A2L certified or approved, or I don't know what the exact word is, but that kind of stuff, we see a lot of scare tactics going on there. There's basically two viable replacements for 410A. I've been through this with some of the big manufacturers too. Some companies take a side. They say, well, our low GWP is better than this low GWP. Now we rep companies that have both refrigerants, right? So we're kind of agnostic to it. And I have just learned, like, if someone's saying this one's better than the other one, all they have is this one, like, right? All they have is this one, particular refrigerant. But yeah, I think it's the same. I think we're facing the same things you are. Education, building codes is a big thing. Commercial building codes all have to be updated because of the A2L ASHRAE classification of the refrigerant. So probably a lot of the same stuff you're dealing with.
So I'm now work for a distributor, so I do all the training there. We've seen things change literally within the last 2 weeks. It's almost hard to keep up with.
It's happening so fast. It's like not this January, but the January before is when I started, like, okay, I do the online content and stuff for our company. I better get educated on these A2Ls. I'll tell you, I Googled that for 3 weeks and I was more confused than when I started, like what was happening with it, like what it actually was. So finally I did what I should have done in the beginning, is I reached out to some of the experts that you've seen on our show. And I'm like, man, could you spend a couple hours with me and go through this? And so that's the best advice I have, is find an expert. You find someone you could talk to online, that's even better. You've got content. I'm sure we got content on the YouTube channel, but yeah, it's happening so fast and there's so many questions. And it's just like, it's part of the reason is because you mentioned we're late to the party. Like the rest of the world's been doing this. What happened is some of the states, because we chose not to do it, some of the states said, well, we're going to do it our own way. And now you had all these different states making their own regulations. The manufacturers went to the EPA and said, hey, y'all got to straighten this out. Like, we can't make 5 different chillers and 6 different types of rooftops. So that's why it's a big scramble right now to catch up. So,
well, Tony, what's a chiller? I'm in residential. You're using all these crazy words now.
If you have a house with a chiller, you're doing pretty well. Let's just say that.